I'm really, really excited. Hey, if it's your first night here, my name is Andrew, and I have the privilege of sharing tonight's message, and I'm super, super excited about it, and I'm really ready to get back into it. I've been gone for a couple weeks here, because I put in a little hard work these past couple weeks, and I had this beautiful young lady here. Where's she at? That's my daughter. I'm just kidding. My wife did everything. Obviously, you know that. But there she is. That's why I've been gone. Her name is Eden Adeline. She is beautiful, and she will only ever love me, period. I'm making sure of that. No, but yeah, I'm super glad to be here. I'm really excited. So you guys started this series last week called Insert Blank Here, right? And you talked about Paul. You talked about Paul and the passion he had for Jesus. And when it was that passion he had was directed in the right place, he did great things with it. And tonight, I'm really excited to talk about what I'm going to be sharing with you guys. But before I dive into it, I want to share a story with you guys. Don't worry, it ties into what I'm talking about tonight. But it's a story of, well, first, has anybody here ever gotten hurt, but you were like, I'm too tough. It doesn't hurt, I'm fine. Come on, who's been hurt and was like, I'm fine, I'm totally fine, don't worry about it, it's a flesh wound, right? It happened to everybody probably at some point. This happened to me a couple years ago. It was actually the day before we were getting ready to go to Vox Camp. Vox Camp, that's right. I was in my garage changing the AC vent out of it, because you guys have to change the filter every couple months there, These vents, though, I don't know if you guys have ever changed the AC vent, they have these wires inside that are very, very sharp, all right? Like really, really sharp, all right? And I had taken the old vent out, and I put it on the ground, and I was wearing flip-flops, all right? And I'm changing the other vent out, and I go and I step really, really forcefully. And next thing I know, I feel this really sharp pain in my foot, about right here. And I look down, and I'm like, oh, that's a really sharp wire dug really deep into my foot. That hurts quite a bit. And I go and I take it, and I slowly, this is gruesome. I slowly pull it out, and I just start walking it off. I'm like, I'm good, I'm all right, it's just a scratch, I'm fine. And I let out this, I start yelling a little bit. My wife comes out and she goes, are you okay? And I'm like, why are you reacting that way? And I look down and she goes, look at all of the blood on the floor. There's literally a puddle, like a trail of blood behind you. And guys, it was nasty. I'm not kidding. It was like a crime scene. It was so bad, all right? And I'm like, she's like, do you need me to call like an ambulance? Like, this is bad. I go, I am fine. It's a scratch. It's one scratch. And I walk in and I'm thinking, that's a lot of blood. Well, okay. All right. I'm good though, I'm good. So I go, I just need to sit down for a second. So I go over to our little stoop and I go and I sit down, And I sit like this. The next thing I remember is waking up like this with my wife holding me in her arms as I'm looking up at her, and she's going, Andrew, are you okay? Do I need to call an ambulance? And I still said, no, I'm good. I just passed out for a little bit. That's all. I'm fine. Go get me some gauze. Get some, one of those butterfly Band-Aids, whatever they call it. I'll be fine. I'll wrap it up. I'll be good to go. I was in a lot of pain. And I share that story. And by the way, I didn't actually go to the doctor to get stitches. I still just wrapped it up. And I just let it heal on its own. And it's fine. It's fine now, guys. So don't worry. You don't need stitches. Don't go to the doctor. I'm just kidding. If you get a bad cut, go to the doctor, all right? I didn't tell you that. All right. But I share that story because it wasn't until I'm cradled in my wife's arms, who I think may have been pregnant at the time. I don't know. But I'm cradled in her arms that I realized, I need some help. I had to humble myself and think, okay, this is a lot worse than I realized that it was, right? And tonight, we're going to be talking about a guy who realized how much help he needed from the very beginning. A guy who was really, really humble. Everybody say, I'm humble. Say it again. Say it louder, prouder. I don't know many people who say they're humble out loud, guys. Jeez. I'm kidding. I told you to. But we're going to be talking about a guy who knew from the start of his story that he needed help with like everything. It's the guy who he had to endure this really long, tough process when God called him to do this really amazing task. And at times during this process, he felt like he was going to reach a breaking point with the people who he was leading. I'm talking about the guy who parted the Red Sea behind him, the guy who held up the 10 Commandments, the guy who freed the Israelites from Egypt and led them to the Promised Land, the guy, Moses. Moses is tonight's guy we're going to be looking at and talking about. Now, like I said, he had this really tough process that he had to go to, but God was going to use him for something great, right? I don't know, how many of us you think here, if God came to you and said, hey, I got this really, really great task, this great purpose that I want to use you for. But in order to get there, it's going to be a really tough process. It's going to be painful. You might suffer a little bit. The road might be long. How many of us would be like, yes, super welcoming to the idea that God was going to put us on this platform and purpose, but then when we find out the process and how difficult it is, we'd be like, maybe not. We might be a little bit hesitant or scared to be used by God, knowing that. Moses was a guy who God was able to use for a great thing and lead the people out of Egypt. But what was it about Moses that made him so perfect for this job? Was it his charisma? Was it his intellect? His way with words? When you read the Bible, it really wasn't any of that, right? Those weren't the traits about Moses that made him the perfect person to do this. No. And if we go to Numbers chapter 12, everybody go there in your Bibles. Numbers 12, verse 3. I'll give you a minute. All right. It says this: Now Moses was a very humble man, more humble than anyone else on the face of the earth. So the thing that made Moses the perfect person, the one that God could use, was his humility. Everybody say humility. Humility is that secret ingredient, that thing that person has that God can look at a person when they have it and say, yeah, I could use him, or I could use her to do some really great things. So I want you to ask yourself this question and keep it in your mind as we're talking about and dissecting the trait of humility tonight. And ask yourself this: if you were in front of God right now and he had to use certain traits and qualities to fill in the blank about you and your life, could one of those traits be humility? Could God say, insert humility here for this person, for you? Keep that question in your mind as we're going here tonight. C.S. Lewis, he described humility this way. He said, humility isn't thinking less of yourself, it's thinking of yourself less. There's so much there as Christians that we should unpack. Okay, what does that mean? Well, humility to me has always been one of those traits that people either they completely understand, they get it, or they totally miss the point of what being humble is. Anybody got a friend who was so happy to tell you how humble they are? Anybody? Come on. I'm super humble, bro. I'm humble about usually those are the ones who I think miss the point of what being humble is. And then there's also people, and I've had people actually tell me that this is what being humble is, where it's that person who they think it means don't think that great about yourself, or don't act like you know anything better than anybody else, or just keep your mouth shut and you'll be considered humble. What's interesting about Numbers 12 verse 3 is, did you guys know Moses wrote the book of Numbers? So Moses is letting us know he was the most humble man on the face of the earth. I know, that sounds crazy. It's would somebody humble tell you something like that? That's a little bit, okay, all right, Moses, chill. But I would actually argue, yes, if you're Moses. When you're Moses, you really get humility. The things that he went through, the things that he had to endure, made him more than qualified to tell others that he was humble. Anybody ever been humbled by somebody? Somebody who was just better at something than you? A couple of years ago, or not a couple of years ago, almost like 8 years ago, wow. When my wife and I first got married, there we go, I started going with her and her family to go see the rest of her family in Virginia. And so the first year we were there, I met her 12-year-old cousin. All right, great kid, I love that kid, he's awesome. And while we're up there, we bring the PS4 and we have video games going, and one of the games there, he goes, oh, you guys got NBA 2K? Can we play that? Come on, let's play. It's like, so I'm thinking, I'm decent at NBA 2K, okay, I'm all right, okay? He can't be that great, so I'm gonna go a little easy on this kid, all right? Guys, third quarter, he's beating me by almost 30 points. It's bad. Josh was there. He was the victim. He remembers. He's beating me by like 30 points. And whenever I would do something really good, I look over at him and I realize a couple times, he's not pressing any buttons. He's letting me score. Oh my goodness, this is so demeaning. This is messed up. Needless to say, I got humbled that day by a 12-year-old. All right? And I'm humbled, honestly. I'm humbled every day. I raised 2 boys. My 5-year-old tells me on a regular daily basis, when he asks me a question and I answer him, he's like, Dad, that's wrong. You don't know what you're talking about. I'm like, kid, I literally know so much more than you. Well, you got me beat on like Paw Patrol and PJ Masks. All right, I'll give you that. But everything else, I know more than you. But he still is like, nah, you don't know. I mentioned my wife had a baby. I could tell you guys, that is one of the most humbling experiences you will ever be in, okay? All right? Seeing my wife give birth, okay? Man, okay, guys, one day when you get married, be thankful to any woman who is willing to endure that to bear your child. I'm just going to say that. Man, wow. All right. I don't have an ego up here. I'm used to being humbled, okay? And I don't think Moses had much of an ego, because if you also look at what Moses wrote about himself in the book of Exodus, because he wrote that also, Moses writes a few different things about himself that shows like this guy did not think much of himself at all. Go to chapter 3 right now in Exodus. In verse 11, we're going to jump around a little bit here. Verse 11, this is when God is telling him, like he's choosing him for this huge task, right? Moses says to God, who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt? All right, there's one. Then chapter 4, verse 1. Moses says to God, what if they don't believe me or listen to me and say, the Lord did not appear to me? All right, there's another one. Verse 10, pardon your servant, Lord. I have never been eloquent, neither in the past, nor since you have spoken to your servant. I am slow of speech and tongue. And then finally, verse 13, chapter 4, Exodus, pardon your servant, Lord. Please send someone else. So Moses, from the beginning of this whole thing of God asking him to do this, he says, Lord, I can't speak well. I'm a nobody. I'm not qualified. Please just send someone else, God. And yet God chose him anyway. It was like God looked at Moses and says, Moses, I appreciate the humble heart you have behind this denial, this not wanting to do this. I appreciate that, but let's tweak your thinking a little bit here, Moses, because it sounds like you have this super low opinion of yourself where it's almost as if you have this self-hatred that is stopping me from being able to use you to do this great thing. Don't worry, we're good. It was stopping him to be able to use this. God said, I think you forgot who I am. I created you in my image. Where you are weak, I will be your strength. If you will surrender to my will. Humility is not hating ourselves. Humility is surrendering to a God who loves us. It means that we're able to recognize our complete dependence on God for everything. It means trusting that God will defend and he looks out for those who are humble. Psalm 147 says the Lord supports and defends those who are humble. So ask yourself, are we willing to surrender and be dependent on God no matter what? Are you willing to possibly even leave comfort in order to serve God? I don't know if you guys know this, but Moses, he was raised in the palace. He was adopted into Pharaoh's royal family. He lived there. He had luxury. He had wealth, security, all of that good stuff. And then one day, he chose to stand up to an injustice he was witnessing. And because of that, that meant he had to leave his life of comfort in the palace and flee, risking possible death in the desert. And then he would eventually go on to serve a group of people who complained all the time, turned on him, at times asked if they could go back into slavery. All of this, that Moses left the palace for all of this. Why? Because humility doesn't say it's what's best for me, it's what's right before God. The late evangelist named Nabil Qureshi, he passed away a few years ago, but one of the things about Nabil Qureshi was that he actually grew up a Muslim. His family was from the Middle East, so his whole family believed Islam. And he said that later on when he became a Christian in life, one of the stories he shared was, as he described it, was the hardest day of his life. When he had to go and tell his father, who believed Islam, was Muslim, that he was no longer Muslim, he was now a Christian. And he called it the hardest day of his life because when he told his father this, his father said, "This is the saddest day of my life because today my son has died." There are people who get disowned by their families for choosing Jesus. There are people who lose relationships for Jesus. They get beat down emotionally every day for Jesus. But then, on the other hand, there's some people, maybe in this room, who aren't willing to give up a certain image of themselves on social media or social status in order to glorify God. Oh, hey, that song in your reel, what's that big E stand for? Is that okay. Yeah, but it's the lyrics instrumental though. There's the lyrics part, it's not the curse part. Okay, hey, let's say this. What if Jesus was scrolling through the Instagram and he came up to you and said, "Hey, that song in your reel, I really liked it. Can you give me the rest of the lyrics and everything for that?" Makes you think about it a little differently, right? There's some of us who won't walk away from toxic relationships because we crave validation from that person instead of validation from God. Ruffling some feathers. Some of us in this room even have trouble admitting we're wrong when we know we're wrong, but we'd rather look confident than be humbled. I've been there. Moses had a choice. Keep his comfort in the palace or follow God's calling and risk death in the desert. Humility means leaving the palace, even if it means dying in the desert, in order to fulfill God's calling on your life. Humility is willing to surrender to God's will no matter what, and trusting that God's authority is enough. God picked Moses because he was willing to surrender, not because he already had this great influence or this great authority over people. If anything, he lost influence whenever he left the palace. Any chance of leading anybody. Anybody here like the spotlight? Does anybody here know somebody who likes the spotlight? Yep. Look at your friend next to you and say, "Be humble." Let's see how long this goes. It was just 2 words. Just 2 words. Just 2 words. Stop there. All right? I had a friend in high school like that. He was the worst. He'd be the guy who would always answer the question before anybody even discussed anything, or always try to take charge of the situation and be like, shut up, bro. What are you doing? You're not good at this. God was able to use Moses to lead a nation out of slavery because Moses didn't put himself in the spotlight. He let God be the center of the story. Humility means not needing to be the center of the story. Everybody say, I don't need to be the center. He didn't want to be the spotlight. Moses didn't want to be the spotlight. He just wanted to obey God. And he didn't care about being seen. We live in the culture today. We live in a society that is borderline addicted to needing to be seen. Right? We see there's people who on social media will turn the most smallest tasks into cinema. Like you've seen the reels, right? Somebody goes out, I went out to get my mail today. I looked down the street and I saw that lady all by herself watering her plants. And then I looked the other way and I saw a man sitting on his porch just in his rocking chair. And I wondered, are they lonely like me? Bro, you were just getting the mail. What are you talking about? Or you see the reels on Instagram and stuff where it's like they're going and helping the homeless. We saw this man outside of our store, so we offered him some food. The next day he was still there, so we have a retail store that sells clothes, so we offered him clothes. The next day he was still there. We said, do you have experience in retail? And the next picture is the guy in the store, assistant store manager, right? We see him. Right? And the whole time you're watching, it's like, wow, that is really great audio. Those camera angles are perfect. Wait, was this pre-staged? I'm confused. It's fake. It seems fake. It seems filtered, like a filtered performance is how they make humility seem. And we see it all over social media, living my best life. My boyfriend loves me. My girlfriend, that's my ride or die. You guys still say that? Yeah? All right. But we see stuff like that. It's like people get stuck in this social media validation loop, right? They run and they go post something and they go immediately, they go look for comments and likes. Who shared it? Oh my goodness. When they're not sharing anything really meaningful, they're just looking for some validation, maybe a little bit of attention. Like this one, the gym selfie. Yeah. Let's be honest, guys, it's all you. It's all the fellas on that one, right? Really, bro? Another gym selfie, huh? No shirt this time. Bold. That's bold. Not sure if you're there yet, but that's bold. Look, fellas. I'm gonna be real with you for a second here, okay? Listen. There's nothing wrong with working out, okay? There's nothing wrong with staying disciplined and being in shape. Discipline is biblical, but I want to ask the really hard question, the obvious question, but it's a hard question to answer. Why are you really posting that picture? Come on. Why are you really posting that gym selfie? Oh, bro, I want to inspire people. Come on. Really? I want to inspire people. No, you don't. You just want people to look at your picture and say, bro, you look jacked. What's up? You know it's the truth. Come on. All right? You're not flexing your discipline. You are flexing for compliments. I'll just say it. I'm just going to say it. All right? Stop it. Look. God is not against working out. He's not against strength. He created it, right? But God did not design you to find your identity in your abs, your pump, or your PRs. All right? Another one, this one too on social media we see. The beach selfie. What? The bathing suit selfie. This is awkward, okay? But I feel like, I wasn't going to spend time on this, but I feel like now I'm a girl dad. So I have now taken on my full form of fatherhood, okay? And look, I want to be serious. Okay, for real though. Ladies, listen. I know culture will tell you that showing more means getting noticed more. Culture will tell you that if your picture doesn't get enough likes, that it means you're not enough. That's a lie. Okay? That's a complete lie. Look, you were never created to be someone's scroll-stopping moment. You were created to reflect the image of God. You don't need to post pictures of yourself half-dressed in order to prove how beautiful you are. Your beauty, it does not need to be advertised to show how valuable you are. Look, I got more. Because this just came flowing out of me when I was writing for y'all. Okay, hold on. God didn't create you. God did not create you to compete for attention. He created you for a purpose that is deeper than any like or comment you can get for your image. Okay? And the more you know your worth in Christ, the less validation you need from the world. All right? So being modest is not about hiding your body out of shame. It's about honoring your worth because your worth is sacred. All right? Good? All right. All right. But we see posts like that, people looking for their own attention. The whole see me, look at me post. You know what I would love to see more of on social media, guys? Posts that say, instead of saying, see, look at me, say, hey, look at God. I would love to see the selfie of someone saying, check out this selfie of me on my mission trip. God did some amazing things here while I was here. Or look at my Bible highlights from this morning. Look at what God is speaking to me right now. Or look at this insight or this commentary of my verse of the day. Man, God is so good. Posting about Jesus is awesome. I love that so much. But I will say this, be careful. Just briefly. There is this thing called Christian pride. And when our posts about God are done in order for you to show how spiritual you are, that's an issue. Okay? And I'm not saying to stop posting about Jesus. Please do. But just remember this. You're posting not to make yourself famous, but to make God famous. Moses was not looking to be famous. He was just desperate to see God move. If everything that we do, whether it's serving or posting, is more about our own name than God's name, that's not humility. That's just ego dressed up in humility. It's fake humility, and God's not going to bless that, guys. He sees straight through it. God says, no, you are not full of humility. You are full of pride. Some of you thought I was going to say something else, didn't you? Shame. He says, no, you're full of pride. The dangerous thing about pride, guys, is one moment of pride can ruin years of faithful humility. You guys ever heard of the baseball player Barry Bonds? If you look at pictures of Barry Bonds, before he set the home run record and after the home run record, there's a big difference. Like a big difference. He's jacked, right? Early on, he had a great career, but he was much more of a slender guy and everything, you know. Then you look at him when he broke the home run record, the dude is jacked, and he's older, which, okay, that's interesting. But anyways, he retired, but later on, this whole scandal came out with all of these baseball players attached to it who were accused of using PEDs and steroids and everything, and his name was on there, and he admitted it. He admitted that I used steroids. And since he admitted it, his career was looked at totally differently. It was marred and it was looked at as just less than. And because of that, he has still, to this day, not been elected into the Baseball Hall of Fame, which is a big deal to a lot of baseball players, all right? But because in one moment of, I want to get there faster, he decided to help his performance physically, right? He made a choice that wasn't really the best way. It was a choice just to get a result faster. It was a choice that was done almost in disobedience in a way, because that's not how you do things, right? He knew that. You know, there's a moment in Moses' story when we see just how pride and disobedience can have major consequences, all right? Now, to set up this story of what happens with Moses, just so you know, at this point, we're like almost 40 years deep of Moses and the people of Israel in the desert, all right? And Moses is like, he's fed up with the people. He's fed up. They're complaining all the time. They're always doubting him. They're turning on him, like I said. You know, they're saying he's not a good leader. And he's like to a point of like, God, these people, oh my gosh, right? And then when they come to him saying how thirsty they are, he doesn't take it very well. He's done. So when he goes and he's talking to God about this, God tells him this. Everybody go to Numbers 20. We're going to start in verse 8. All right, you there? Almost? All right. Verse 8, all right. God tells Moses this. He says, take the staff, and you and your brother Aaron gather the assembly together. Speak to that rock before their eyes, and it will pour out its water. You will bring water out of the rock for the community so they and their livestock can drink. So Moses took the staff from the Lord's presence, just as he commanded. He and Aaron gathered the assembly together in front of the rock, and Moses said to them, listen, you rebels, must we bring water out of this rock? And then Moses raised his arms with the staff, and he hit the rock twice, and water came rushing out. So God told Moses, speak to the rock. Just speak. But instead, Moses hit the rock. This is huge. It doesn't seem like as huge of a thing. It's like, oh, he was mad. Oh, come on, Moses. But actually, this is huge what he does here. This is a huge moment of pride, a moment of anger, a moment of Moses saying, God, I'm going to do this my way. And it's a huge moment that has huge consequences. And we read that consequence and what it is in verse 12. He says, but the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, because you did not trust in me enough to honor me as holy in the sight of the Israelites, you will not bring this community into the land I give them. God says, you're not going to bring the Israelites into the promised land. Let that sink in for a second. 40 years, okay, of complete obedience, of faithfully serving in obedience to God, all gets undone by one unchecked moment of prideful disobedience that Moses has. Undone just like that. Imagine being a student in high school, right? And your goal is to be valedictorian. It's your senior year. You got like a 5.9 GPA. You're a genius. So smart. I don't even know how you get that high of a GPA, but I've heard it before. 5-point-something GPA, and there's somebody who's like right there, but you know, as long as you do your tests to finish out the school year, take your final exam, you'll be good. You'll be fine, right? The night before your final exam, though, you were like, I know this subject. I'm good. I don't got to study. I don't got to do this. It's senior week. I'm going to go have fun with my friends. We're going to stay out late, have a good time, all that stuff. And so because you did that, you chose not to study, you chose to stay out late and have fun, you oversleep, you missed the test, and now number 2 is now number 1, and you're back 4 years, hard work, all of your studies undone. That's a big deal. Now imagine 40 years being in the desert, all undone for Moses because he chose pride. That's huge. This could happen too to any of us, guys. In a big moment like that, when our emotions like anger and pride are allowed to control what we choose to do, especially in the moments that matter. Some of us here, some of you guys here tonight, you might be on the edge of your own promised land, whether it's a freedom from a sin or a restoration to a relationship or just a breakthrough in your faith. But because you're so tired of waiting for it, you're like, oh my gosh, can we just get this going already? You want to try things your own way and possibly risk being able to reach it. All for pride. But listen, let tonight be something that sinks in. And hear me, guys. God takes humility seriously. He takes obedience to him seriously. And when we mess up one time, when we mess up one time and we disobey God out of pride, understand God doesn't owe us anything just because we had so many other moments of faithfulness before that. He doesn't owe us anything. God already came down and paid our debt in full when he gave us salvation, when Jesus died on the cross. So God doesn't owe us anything. That's why every single moment matters. Every single moment matters that we obey the things that God has called us to do, whether big or small moments. There could be a moment of disobedience that could have major consequences, not just on your life, but on the lives of other people around you. And one choice that you make in a moment could change the course of the life that God had planned for you. It had to pain God to do this for Moses, to do this to Moses. It had to. But think about it. God, like Moses, you're the one who was leading them. You had this chance to show the people, to restore their faith in me by giving them water, by speaking to it. But instead, they got water, and all they're going to remember is how pissed off you were and you hit that rock. They're not going to remember me at all. What kind of precedent would I be setting if I now rewarded you? God doesn't want it. He doesn't want to take those things away from us, but sometimes he has to. Because it's not always about us. Humility is one of those things where we have to be willing to listen to God, even when we think our way is better, or our logic tells us that man, things were really great before when I was obeying God, but now my situation, it really sucks. This doesn't make any sense, and I'm still obeying God. Maybe I should try a different way here. But see, guys, humility means obedience to God, even when it doesn't make sense. There is freedom in surrendering our need to fully understand everything about our situation before we choose to obey God. There's something that is so much more beautiful that the Bible calls us to do before we apply our logic and before we apply our feelings to our situation. The Bible calls us to first trust. Trust that God's ways are infinitely higher than ours. God's ways are perfect, even when they seem to collide with what seems reasonable to us in a moment. Humility, though, it gets tested when obedience to God challenges our comfort, our logic, and even our own personal conviction. All my friends, they're going out, they're getting drunk, but I don't think I should be doing that. But also though, I don't want to feel uncomfortable by confronting them. I know, though, that I feel like I'll be judging them, and I know the Bible says that we should hold others accountable, but that doesn't work here for me. That makes me too uncomfortable. I don't agree with that command. But look, it's not about agreeing with every command. It's about trusting the one who gave the command is better, wiser, and worthy of our total surrender. Moses was told to speak to the rock, but he struck it instead. Some of us in here tonight, we're striking at things that God told us to surrender to him. God said, quiet yourself and pray about it, but you're yelling at it. God said, wait for it, but you're forcing it. He said, trust me with it, but you're trying to control it. You have this tight grip. You're tense, you're angry, trying to make sense about all of this stuff, of what's going on. Well, we can't walk in the promises of God with our fists clenched and our hearts hardened, trying to force everything in our life to make sense and trying to make sense of it before we choose to obey him. If we do that, we will always be on the outside of our promised land looking in. James 4, verse 6 says this. You guys will go there in your Bibles. says, God opposes the proud, but gives grace to the humble. Let me say that first part again. God opposes the proud. If pride puts us in opposition to God, then whose side are we standing on? I want to ask that question that I asked you guys earlier, the one that I said, hey, keep it in your mind. Do you remember it? Just kidding, I'll say it. That question that I asked, though, was if you were in front of God right now, what traits or qualities could he use to describe your life? Could he insert humility here? Or would he have to insert pride, controlling, insecure? Moses is a great example of a humble leader because he let God lead. He trusted God more than himself, and he surrendered even when it wasn't in his best interest. And the one time he didn't, it kept him from the best thing that God had for him. Look, guys, we don't have to be the best speaker or the best influencer or scholar for God to use us. He's just looking for someone who will say, God, you can have all of me. Someone who keeps themselves open with humility to be used by God. Because humility allows God to use us to do great things for his kingdom. About 2,000 years ago, which was about 1,400 years after Moses lived, there was another guy who lived. Maybe you've heard of him. His name is Jesus. And Jesus was fully man and fully God. And as far as humility goes, Jesus wins, hands down, and he blows the competition out of the water. There's so many acts of humility that we see in the Bible from Jesus and hear the things that he says about humility. But one of those ones was, I think, one of the most impactful, at least to me, really to anybody. It's the night before he's going to be arrested and crucified. The night before, he washed the feet of all 12 of his disciples. I don't know about you guys, I don't like feet. I'm not a feet guy. 24 feet he washed. It says that he took off his outer garments, he wrapped himself in a towel, got down on his hands and knees, one by one, all of his disciples. God himself did this. It was that kind of humility that also allowed Jesus, the Son, to be used by God the Father to fulfill the greatest act in human history, the death and resurrection on the cross, the thing that gave us our life. And it's because of that great humility that he had that God was able to use him. God the Father could use him. This is the standard of humility. Jesus. This is it. But how do we reach that standard? How do we reach that standard of humility? Oswald Chambers says this about humility, and I love this so much. He says, humility is not an ideal to strive for, but instead a result. It is the result of a right relationship with Christ. True humility is a natural outcome of a life that is surrendered to God and focused on him. The only way we stay connected to humility is by staying connected to Jesus. So tonight, we're going to be going into a time of worship here to close things out. And during that time, I want you guys to really think about that connection that you have with Jesus. If you have it. Do you have that level of relationship to where humility is just a thing that happens for you?